Hello, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time to Page Chewing Comics and Manga Pick of the Week. This is episode number 45. This is a podcast where we talk about mostly new, primarily single-issue comics. My name is Mike, and I'm back here once again with my friend Steve. We'll be sharing what we read this past week, including our picks of the week. If you're joining us for the first time, we're two guys who are back in the swing of the weekly pull comics experience. And we're also finding brand new comics that may interest us for whatever reason. So, Steve, how are you doing these days? Or how was your week of comics reading?
Well, it's been a very busy week, but my week of comics reading has not been very good. It's been pretty rough. But I was not asked if I was the G.I. Joe guy at my comic book shop, so maybe I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I was asked that if hey, are you the guy who likes the G.I. Joe comics? And I was like, no, not really. But that is a little bit of a, it's not a spoiler, but it's something we might be talking about later today.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I wonder what one has to do to be labeled the G.I. Joe guy. What does that entail? Like, what has this person done to be labeled the G.I. Joe guy?
I wonder if it was somebody that is like, I'm just loving the new series and really animated for God knows what reason. I don't fault anybody. Maybe I look like other people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the G.I. Joe thing. We'll get into it. But yeah, it's been kind of a rough week. But it was rough. It was hard to pick a pick this week. But I'll start off with one of the ones that I was considering for the pick that obviously did not make it. That is Get Fury number 2. This is by Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. And anybody who listens or who knows me knows that I'm a sucker for Garth Ennis and or Jason Burrows. And especially when they do any Punisher or Fury, it was a good book. I felt like the story. Well, Frank is on his way to find Fury, and we find out more about how Fury ended up in this predicament, and the culture, the corruption, and the political intrigue and maneuvering that's going on behind the scenes. All the other things that are taking place that are contributing to this situation being even messier than we thought it would be. It was already messy enough. So it seemed a little bit like the pacing after the first issue seemed a little bit off to me. It didn't seem like it kind of a valley after a peak in a way. And it was still good. It just wasn't, it didn't kind of keep the momentum going. It just seemed, I don't know. It just seemed a little bit different. Of course, the artwork is fantastic. I still enjoyed the writing. Everything else is fine. It's still good. Of course, I'll still keep reading it. But yeah, it was a little bit. It felt a little bit deflating after the first issue, but it's still good.
Wow. Yeah, I really expected you to just keep loving the series. I hope it picks up next time.
I have faith. I have faith in Ennis and Burrows that they'll complete faith in them to make this series great. So yeah, but like I said, it wasn't bad. It was just wasn't pick of the week material this week.
Right. Yeah. So for my first comic that I'll be talking about today is called Profane. This is Profane number 1 by Boom Studios. The author is Peter Milligan. And I looked up his name, and he is well known and he's an Irish author, having worked on Hellblazer and Britannia. I may have mispronounced the name, but just thought I was curious what else he had done before. So this is kind of it starts off on the very first page with the character is the titular Will Profane, and he says, "This is going to be a murder mystery, and there's going to be a dead body," right on page 1. So it's just kind of interesting how, and initially I will say it put me off, but there is a lot of first person narration or voiceover, if you will. I guess that's more of a film medium, but it's just like first person narration quite a lot throughout, at least significantly for the first maybe 7 pages or so. So you're kind of like, what is this? What's going on? And there's a little bit of campy humor, but it's generally like kind of like a hard boiled detective story. The pacing is very fast. And this is a theme with another book that I'm actually going to be talking about next, where I just feel like they're trying to do a lot in one issue. I will say for those people that are really into like this genre, whether it's neo-noir or hard-boiled detective, I think it's probably worth checking out. There is a very interesting twist here, though, which I will just say, I will just hint at the twist in that the main character is not who you think he is. And there is a reason why there is all this kind of narration that's building you up for something at the end. And I think the artwork is okay. It's it's very colorful, very dramatic splashes of color, which I appreciate. I'm noticing that more and more. And I really appreciate it, but in some ways it doesn't completely work for me, and I have no idea why. I wish I could describe it better. And it's obviously I'm not a professional artist, so I don't have any way of describing it better than that. It just didn't work for me that well. But I can't say it's a miss. I'm really on the fence of whether I'm going to continue. I probably will, just to see where it goes. But it's got an interesting twist. I didn't see it coming, but that doesn't mean anything.
That's a great first line, though. It's a good catchy first line. Yeah.
It was like I appreciated that. I just feel like there is a lot going on here too, and you're just kind of like your head is spinning a little bit for the first issue.
So you're on the fence with Profane.
Yes, I'm on the fence. I will probably continue though.
Huh. All right. Well.
And I forgot to mention it's by Image Comics. I think I forgot. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's Boom Studios. I did mention that.
Oh, okay.
Oh well.
Let's try and find that one. So the next book books I caught up with is I went back and caught up on Ultimate Spider-Man because I realized I was a few issues behind. I had read 3, which was mind-numbingly boring. The whole dinner party thing, I think that was 3. It just then I read 4, and then of course I read 5. So we'll talk about issue 5. It just this book, the way it flows and the pacing feels more like a movie to me. It has like a pacing of like the pace of something that's going to be adapted, that's made to be adapted into a film. Like the story beats and the events that are happening, it feels more like scenes out of a movie than on a page. So that's how it reads to me, but it didn't seem that way to me the first couple issues. It felt very kind of entrenched in the comic book format, and now it feels more like a movie. It feels more like I said, it feels like more like you're reading a movie. There are lots of threads that are being set up with the Kingpin and the Starks, the Osborns, Bullseye. There's a lot of things that they're developing. So there are things that they're kind of building up. And I do like being on the ground floor of these things, kind of seeing them come up. What kind of irritates me, though, and I get why this is done sometimes, is that there's these famous lines from previous books or from the movies that they just recycle just to be like for the fans, be like, oh, there's that line. Why? I don't know. I get the Ultimate Universe is still connected. It's still not a completely different like Elseworlds thing, but I don't know. I'm kind of disappointed because I felt like the series started off really strong, and I don't know if it's a combination of the artwork that changed. I think the artist changed on issue 3.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that when you talked about it, and it just feels like a different book. So I'm going to give it another issue or two and see what happens, but it feels a little too familiar, and I don't know. I'm kind of bummed because it started off so strong, and now it seems like it's kind of, for me anyway. I know it's still very popular, but I'm not as excited about it as I was before.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. Take on that. You feel like you're reading a movie, or what would you call it? Like a storyboard or something. I wonder. You gotta wonder with these big franchises that either the author is thinking about that, or the powers that be at Marvel are like, hey, we're going to reboot this guy again, in a couple years, which I think Spider-Man feels like, in the films at least, we get a new character playing Spider-Man every few years, it looks like. So I don't know. But then did you realize that there's a whole, I did not get into this, and I don't think I will, there's a whole Ultimates series as well, and I just didn't go for it.
I had it in my hand.
Yeah.
And I decided not to do it just because I kind of flipped through it, and it just seemed like more of the same. I didn't really go through it, but from flipping through it, it just felt like, do I really want to do this? Like, do I really want to just,
yeah.
I'll stick with Ultimate Spider-Man for now and kind of see where it goes. And maybe I'll go back and start this, but it just didn't, it just seems like the same characters doing the same things with the Ultimate label on it. And it just wasn't enough for me to give it a shot. So,
yeah.
And obviously I think we're in the minority because a lot of people really love these books and really love Marvel, and they go back every week and buy these Marvel books. So, yeah, it's great if you enjoyed it. Just for me, it just couldn't bring myself to do it. There's just so many other books to read that I'm excited about, that we're going to talk about here in a bit, that it's just hard to get into another event that I have to read a few other books to really enjoy. There's so many other books connected that I just don't really want to go down that road. So.
Yeah, I totally understand. We'll see if I continue as well. So next up for me, I have, this is quite a title. Falling in Love on the Path to Hell. That's the full title. And this is the first issue from Image Comics by Gary Dugan and Gary Brown. So two Garys, both actually spelled a little bit differently. I gotta say, the artwork is what pulled me in. I didn't have any, I think the cover is quite intriguing, at least the one I have, because I'm sure there are probably variants. But you see a kind of Old West type of dude with I guess he has a shotgun, and then there's a lady dressed in, I will say, she's at some sort of Japanese garb from the, I don't know if you call it the Shogun days or the days of the samurai, if you will. So I was like, oh, that could be really interesting. And then some haunting specter in the background. Well, let me just say, as I mentioned earlier when I talked about Profane, this is similar in that there's just so much happening in this story. And the two characters I mentioned, they have two seemingly different storylines that we follow, and the storylines are quite violent, which I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. It's you get to see some body parts flying here. Quite a bit of gore, if that's your thing. That didn't, and I have to say the artwork again is just stupendous. I'm really pleased with it. I think the artist might be the name of O'Halloran. But I just feel like trying to bring these two characters together from different parts of the world back in time, and they do come together kind of at the end. It's just very rushed. I think that could have played out in several issues. Maybe that's just me. I like things to be a little bit more of a slower burn, and so I just something about again, just there's elements about this that I loved. And let me say it looks like the characters do meet in hell, if I'm not mistaken. So that's in the title. But it's not totally clear. Yeah. Yeah. But there's just a lot going on. So I wasn't like a huge fan, but I don't feel like it was a total waste of my time either.
Interesting. So is this one will you continue this one?
I don't know. There's, like you just said, there's so much out there. This is going to sound terrible, but if it's an off week, I might pick it up. But otherwise, I don't know. It just, wasn't enough. Yeah. To get me to continue.
Yeah. No,
I don't think so. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's fair. There's a few, that's a great, we should add that to the yes or no. If it's an off week.
Yeah.
One that you had mentioned last week is William of Newbury. Mm-hmm. It's basically a raccoon YA version of Hellblazer. It's kind of the way that it that's kind of what I kind of, that, because he works with the church, and he's kind of goes around and fights evil and rids evil spirits. And there is a fair amount of humor in it, kind of this lighthearted humor. It is interesting to see the humor, and then the kind of the creatures and the spirits and things that he's fighting. It was a little bit too lighthearted for me. I have to say, it was fine. I didn't dislike it. It was just not something that I think I'll continue with. But the artwork did remind me a lot of Mike Mignola on Hellblazer. The same kind of style and characterization. It reminded me a lot of Mike Mignola. So that was good. I'll just get into the next one really quickly, which is Charred Remains, issue 6. It's the last issue in the series. So the final issue on this one, I really enjoyed the series from issue 1. There was a little bit there where it felt a little shaky. I thought they set up a lot of, they really did a great job, especially in the first couple issues, setting up characters and developing them and getting them kind of to really care about them and really draw you in and really feel like you were really getting into the nitty gritty of these characters and kind of get attached to them. I think they really did a really fantastic job. And then they developed other kind of plot points and threads in the later issues that I kind of feel weren't really, there wasn't enough payoff for it. I think there were some ideas that were brought in later in the series that kind of some surprises later in the series that I don't feel like it was the payoff wasn't. I feel like could have been more. I think if we had one more issue to really smooth all these things out and really kind of explore them and tie up all the loose ends, I think it could have been more impactful. I do wonder if there'll be another part of the series later. I think I wouldn't mind if there was. There was an action scene at the end of this issue that was kind of hard to follow. I didn't really know what was happening and what was happening to who. There's a few different characters involved, so it did feel a little disjointed for me. I didn't really follow what was going on. Overall, I think it was a good read. I think the story, I thought, was the things that were developed later that were brought up, the surprises, especially issue 5. That was really cool. I thought I didn't really see it coming. That was really interesting. The kind of the things that they did with it. So some really cool ideas. I think, like I said, characters I thought were done really well. And I think just one more issue would have really smoothed things over. But overall, I think it's worth the read if you're into kind of the horror. Yeah, I think it leans more into horror. But yeah, I think it's worth a read if you're into it. And I love the way the art is consistent throughout the whole series. That it does look like the page is on fire. Just the different colors and the way that the pages are colored, and it does everything. It makes you feel uncomfortable the whole way.
Yeah, I only read the very first issue of Charred Remains. Is there not like a serial killer or serial arsonist character, or did I misunderstand?
Kind of, yeah.
That's kind of the bad. Okay.
Yeah, there's a big bad. Without spoiling anything, there is kind of a big bad, and the more that you learn about him and the arsonist, it went places I did not expect that I thought were pretty neat. But it did feel a little goofy at times in the last issue, which is, yeah. So it's hard into these series, and whenever I get to the last issue of these books, I always worry about them nailing the landing. So it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm thinking about maybe picking up the trade, possibly checking it out. It might be interesting to read it in one fell swoop. I feel like, with my next two comics that I'll be talking about, at least one is my pick of the week. I feel like there's a lot of time between the issues that they I wonder that has an impact. I don't know if those are the case for you with Charred Remains, or maybe it's just me.
No, it can. I think when there's too much time in between, it can impact. It can kind of set off the flow of the story. Kind of, it can. I think when you read it in one go or you read it all together, it's a whole different experience. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, so next up for me, I have Crashdown #4, and this is, I believe it's by Massive Publishing, which I don't believe I've read much by them at all. So I'm happy to continue with the series. Wow, this is turning out to be something I'm really enjoying. I think the first issue I was kind of like on the fence. I'm glad I stuck with it. So if you're into horror, if you're into sci-fi, if you're into like survival type of stories, this is for you. And this one is an extra gross issue. And we're talking bloated, exploding bodies with tentacles, and it's done very well. The artist is Ben Templesmith. I think we talked about him before, but it's very different. It's just not the art stands out. Sometimes it seems like it is more of a children's or YA type of style, but it's not. And maybe that's there. Maybe, I mean, the first page is definitely not. They really gross you out here. And this one is just a lot more action, not as much of the kind of narrative is shining here, but it's okay. As we have come to understand, there's this crew in a spaceship that are basically trying to go to this new planet, but there's things that continuously go wrong. Like the plan is not so successful. And so basically people have to make very difficult decisions here over and over again. And so there's kind of like two storylines. But that we are faced once again with people talking about how they have to, telling their family members like, yeah, we're able to go away, but the rest of the people will not. And it's just like a very touching moment as well. So I'm appreciating the writing, and I have to say the last thing I want to say about this series, which is, even though this is #4, I think it's continuing. The writers, I believe, are comic YouTubers.
Oh,
yeah. And I looked up one of them, Tom Garcia. He has a YouTube channel, and I checked out one of his videos today, which was like giving me good advice for comic book collecting.
Oh.
One of them is the opposite of what we do, which is they were like, don't just pick things that you like.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not doing so well in that, but that's I think if you want, there was like, this is like kind of like a business perspective or a hobby where you can actually make some money back or whatever. But anyway, I actually thought it was a good episode. I might share it with you, Steve, so you can check that one out.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think both. So the other writer is Ryan Sargent, and I don't know if they work together. I think they might work together, or they have two separate YouTube channels. But I thought that was kind of cool.
Huh.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize there were YouTubers. That's pretty. I mean, you know, writing a book or comic book or creating a movie or whatever, it takes a lot. But to be on YouTube and to be critical of other people's work all the time and then do your own, that's got to be nerve-wracking to be critical, especially if you're overly critical. And then not that they are, I don't know if they are or not, but either way, if you're a reviewer of some kind and then you do your own, it's like, make sure it's not complete crap, because they'll come for you.
I don't know if they do a lot of reviews or not. So far, what I saw was like, this is this particular issue, Hulk number 227 is, has a high value kind of thing. And they talk about the rating and all of that stuff, near mint and whatever, gem, or you probably know more. I won't say I know nothing about that, but it's not something I pay as much attention to, because you certainly see it in the comic book stores.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of my like we mentioned before we started recording. I have had the tab up for the website to check out Crashdown, and then I keep forgetting, so I'll get to it this week.
Yeah.
So we talked before we recorded about Scarlet #1, and I was curious about it. I tried reading Cobra Commander a few months ago. I just didn't really care for it. It was fine. It wasn't enough for me to continue reading. I don't get the whole G.I. Joe universe thing. I know a lot of people love it, so if you do love it, that's great. But I previewed the first couple pages of Scarlet on the website, and it looked kind of like a spy thriller type of thing. So I'll give it a shot. I mean, maybe it'll surprise me. Maybe it'll be, a little bit more serious, I guess. It'll take itself a little bit more seriously. That was wrong. So Scarlet #1, and then I kept hearing about how many units it's shipping and how popular it is, how many units it's selling. So it's very much, all the characters are exactly what you would expect them to be. We have Scarlet, who is kind of the loose cannon, does what she wants, always trying to do the right thing, doesn't listen to authority. You get the whole, do not engage, and like, I'm going to, because I do what I want. It's very much cardboard cutout what all the characters are, what you would expect them to be. Really no surprises. They do. You can pretty much predict what's going to happen next. It's very surface level. It's not something I'll keep buying. The art I thought was good, but there's so many one-liners and so much kind of goofy dialogue in it that it's felt. I'm not the target audience. Let's say it that way. I'm not the audience that they're looking for, which is fine. I hope they sell lots of books, and I hope it is successful. It's just not for me.
Just out of curiosity, I believe this is part of the Energon universe. So did we any mention of Optimus Prime and pals?
No, thankfully, because I have zero interest in any of that stuff. So I thought maybe this would be, because sometimes there'll be a universe that you can jump onto one title and you can kind of enjoy one title out of a universe and you can ignore the rest of the crossovers and stuff. Yeah, it's not the case so far. So
I'm just reading from the website for the description of the comic. It said, mentioned that one of the most anticipated characters for the Energon universe. So I'm not making that up. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, all the YouTubers I watch talk about it. They all love it.
Yeah.
It's just not, I'm just not the audience for it. But I do hope they sell a ton of copies. I hope it does really well.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
but not for me.
Well, I am so excited to talk about my pick of the week here, and I don't know, Steve. I know you're also along for the ride with Under Heist, and I'm bummed that we didn't get a chance to read it. So I'm going to be very careful and not reveal much. But wow, this is this series is just excellent. I think we didn't pick it number 3 for pick of the week, but damn it, I gotta pick number 4. I'm getting some. I will say I'm getting some Berserk vibes. Not very much, but there is, was one element that we even learned about very early on about people kind of getting marked and on their bodies. But there is the main character basically on the surface you think, oh, he's in this kind of love triangle with 2 women, but there's so much more going on there. It's so much more complicated, especially in this issue. And let me just say, I think this quote sums it up, and it doesn't give much away, but this is a quote from one of the characters called Lil. You torture yourself here, David. You repeat your patterns, live your regrets. And she's talking to him in some very like in some part of this world where you're kind of like, there's just something not right here. It just says a lot about what's going on, the background, and there's little hints, plenty of hints, some more overt than others, but it's not hitting you over the head with different plot points or whatever. There's a lot of kind of gruesome scenes throughout this series so far. This one is just very haunting and eerie. And you just don't feel very comfortable. And based on that, I shared a quote that kind of gives you this, it indicates that we're not in reality as we know it here with these characters. And even what they're saying, they're questioning themselves. It's really something else, and I'm just enjoying it. I'm being very careful, Steve, just to pique your interest, because I know you're enjoying it as well.
I am so bummed. I did not find that. I'm so bummed I forgot to look for that one, because it would have been the perfect week for it.
That one is just on my list, so when I go in, they just hand deliver it to me, and I was excited. So yeah, Boom Studios, has got a few great titles here, I think.
I just love the Lanthams. I think they're just fantastic.
I mean, this is like, I don't want to go over the moon here, but there's really something special here. Like, but obviously, if you don't like horror, if you don't like supernatural, but it's really working. I don't know if they can keep it going, but I thought for a while there, I was like, what's going on here? There's so much where you're kind of like, you need to think, okay? Like, you really need to kind of take your time. And I like that. And I don't know if I said it, but there's like things going on in the background that you have to pay attention to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like really interesting things where you're like one panel, for example, in one panel, people are like looking at the characters, and you're like, and then the next one, they're not. And you're like, okay.
What I think really works in this series, I haven't read issue 4 yet, but for the first 3 anyway, the reason I think it really works, the horror elements work, is because they took the time to develop the characters, and they took the time to build them up. They didn't just dive into the horror elements so quickly. And when the horror elements do come in, when those things do happen, it kind of comes out of nowhere, or that impact is felt a lot more because they took the time to develop and to kind of build that anticipation. And I almost didn't expect a lot of the stuff to happen that has happened so far. So yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I feel a little silly now because I should have made sure I had that one. So my pick, it's a very light pick, but it's the pick that I just felt was the best cover to cover issue that I read of the week, which is Neil Before Zod 6. This one, so Zod has taken over the ship, and he is rebuilding his army. He is, whether they like it or not, they're his army. And there is when a creature or a prisoner escape that was in the I guess the maximum security portion of the ship, he has a whole nother set of problems to deal with. We also see Zod struggling with his with not only who he is, but his past and his family, the events that we've seen happen. You see, he's been humanized a little bit, even though he's still a terrible character. I don't think they're looking to redeem him or to make him likable. It's more just to make him seem a little bit more human, that he does have some feelings, even if it's small. I think you need a little bit of that. He can't be cranked up to 10 all the time evil. So they do take a little bit of time to kind of give him a little, round him off a little bit. And I thought it was a nice touch. What I really think works here with this one for me is that there's not a lot of other characters from the DC universe involved. There is a character from the Superman mythos that's involved very briefly. But I do like there's not all these other crossovers, like Batman's not showing up in a spacesuit kind of save the day or anything. That would seem a little goofy. I like that it's contained to him. It's just focused on him and these events. And that's what makes it seem different for me, that they're not trying to have all these other characters pop in and out and kind of muddy the waters. That makes it funner for me, just to kind of feel more self-contained. Although I am fuzzy on the timeline when these events were taking place in kind of the DC universe. Like when is this all happening? I wasn't sure, because they reference a few things that I think happened a very long time ago. So I'm not sure if these are events that have happened way in the past, or is this happening now? I wasn't sure about that. But overall, the artwork grew on me. It's still not my favorite, but I think it works for the book. And yeah, I think so far I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I also read this one, so I have to agree with you on a lot of these points. I in particular, I didn't notice it, but like you said, there are not other characters brought in. I wondered about one of them, but I will ask you after the recording is done, because I just wasn't familiar with this person. But one thing that's interesting, it's the same for Underheist, by the way, is these are not heroes and positive role models per se.
No.
Zod isn't. We knew that he's a bad guy, so it's just like, what motivates him is not. You have to kind of sympathize with him a little bit, but it's more of like, how is he going to get through this situation? Like I thought, I think in one of the previous issues, I thought he was very close to death. Mm. So it looks like he's kind of coming back, and it's he's doing whatever he needs to do to kind of take over, these other beings on this ship that are all kind of like prisoners. So they're all like, well, potential. We don't know. Some people may be prisoners for the wrong reasons or whatever. They're all innocent, but maybe. But it's just it's a really nice setting. I appreciate it so far.
Yeah, it was a light week, but I think cover to cover. I thought about it a lot. I went back and forth with this or Get Fury, and I just felt like it was cover to cover the best one of the week. So here we are. Yeah. So that is episode 45. We're getting close to episode 50. We're still trying to decide what to do for that. I think it's quite the milestone. So we're trying to figure it out. If anyone has any suggestions, we're all ears. Or if you want to come by and talk to us on issue 50, episode 50, let us know. We'll figure something out. But in the meantime, if you want to connect with either of us, you can find us on pagechewing.com. Check out the forums. You can message us directly there, or you can use the fan mail link in the description below and send us a voicemail or a text message, I think. Just be nice. And just any questions you have or suggestions, we'd love to hear about it. And so hopefully your reading week was better than mine. And we'll talk to everyone next week. But in the meantime, hope everyone has a fantastic week, and we'll talk to everyone very soon.
Okay, bye now.